Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's edition of RE352, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Concussive Therapy, written by Bailey Master. Cramped buildings formed a dense cityscape. Bulbous and twisted structures, wrapped and ballooned out like an impressionist painting, falling over one another and drooping like melted putty. Not a single set of stairs was found in the entire city, save for 2 human ships docked at the port. The city's main export was natural gases, farmed by the locals of Feck 252. The city's lack of stairs was due to the fact that the locals didn't have legs. Instead, they floated along thanks to an interior air bladder. This made the location quite difficult to traverse for some races, and a bit of a backwater curiosity for others. All in all, the city was a lovely, if lonely, location. The docks, though, were a different story. Feck 252 lay just outside the fringe of one of the less populated systems. It was far enough out of the way that those who didn't know about it beforehand didn't show up. That, plus being near the edge of a small smuggling route, meant that it was a prime spot for those who weren't too fond of the law or looking to disappear. The dock was filled with all manner of ships. Due to the low value of unprocessed natural gases, the freighters were almost entirely undisturbed by the less than reputable individuals who frequented the port. They solicited illicit goods and services, but since there hadn't been any notable incidents, the locals turned a blind eye. Live and let live, as the saying goes. Chunky old freighters, a few supply ships, and a local package delivery cruiser were the mainstays of the port. The rest of the ships came and went as often as the leaves in the wind, registering under false names and leaving hefty tips. Gritty space scavengers, tiny nomadic vessels, rough-looking route runners, and a few more dangerous-looking ships with a few too many cannons filled the rest of the port. At least 30 different races strode, slid, or crawled amongst the densely packed shops and dens on the main walk. One of the more popular points of interest was the bar, always a welcome sight for those that needed a drink. Outside, the owner was fastening a new window into place. She sighed. It wasn't easy sometimes with all the rough characters around, but it sure was profitable. Inside the bar was jam-packed. Dirty mining crews filled with booths with lone drinkers lined the bar and others scrambled in the corners. Servers hustled back and forth with different brews for different biologies, and the kitchen pumped out the common fare. Conversations filled the air. It was a good night. That is, it would be, if not for the one of the patrons making the rest nervous. A solitary human sat at a bar, nursing a drink. The seats on either side of him were empty, as they should be. A human keeping this company was either wanted, a mercenary, or something equally distasteful. Nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of a drunk human, though this one seemed to be minding its intake. A small table of assembled aliens were muttering to each other. Eyes and noses pointed towards an unassuming-looking figure. Heard one of them knocked Gore out cold. I believe it. Saw footage of one struck in an airlock, beat its way out, ripped apart straight plasticine to do so. Aye, I heard they make what's it called, a adrenny something. The human grumbled. It had heard. Adrenaline. Get off it already. We get it. Big frigging deal. He took a swig of his drink and clacked it down. The human's voice rose. Of all the traits that they were often bandied about regarding humans in combat, most aliens just couldn't seem to get past this one. It was tiring. Adrenaline this, adrenaline that. Nobody cares. Get over it. You've got your shells and your claws and your weird little tentacle things. He gestured at one of the more eldritch patrons of the bar. He waved back at him. We've got ours, so shut up about it, bunch of wankers. The barkeep looked at the human nervously. If he worked himself up any more, there could be a fight. The conversation in the bar had lulled slightly due to the human's raised voice, but luckily he returned to his drink. The table of aliens tried not to seem too tense, but one of them smacked the other that had brought it up. The door clacked open and a newcomer stepped in. Heavy boots clomping on the riveted floor, the empty seat next to the human was filled. 2 engineer specials, not too cold, and burn some Asani for me as well. The barkeep called back the orders and wiped perspiration from her neck. 2 humans. Not good. Several set of eyes turned to the bar, simply watching. A few of the more cautious individuals made themselves scarce, preferring not to gamble with fate. Humans had a habit of breaking things. The first human looked over as the order was put down next to him. "Been a while, okay? Where you been?" Luke threw back her first drink and started munching on his sandy. "Did a few jobs in the Usher Company. Now I'm in security. A ship of runners had some trouble and hired me to keep raiders off them. It's been pretty low-key. Pays good, though." "Heard security was boring. Ain't most of the time spent cramped up in a little ship." "Well, yeah, but I stay occupied. When it hits the fan, though, it's crazy. I shot a ship into a red dwarf a few weeks ago." "You're kidding. Dead serious. What about you, Donnie? Don't tell me that you've been here this whole time." Donnie took a sip of his drink. "Mary and I broke up. I've been, around. Got picked up by floaters as a mechanic." "Oh, how's that been?" The human put his head in his hands, and stress filled his voice. "I haven't exercised in weeks, mate. You gotta walk so careful in those tiny little ships. They rip like paper. Couldn't even set up a VN station. The vibrations damaged the ship. I feel I'm wasting away." Luke stopped eating and put his hand on his fellow man's shoulder. "Done! That's why you're here." Donnie lifted his head and looked at his drink. "Yeah, to be honest, I was hoping to have a fight or two to blow off some steam, but—" He gestured around to the aliens, who quickly averted their eyes. The barkeep's eyes widened in alarm. "They're a bunch of jellies, and I don't beat on them when they don't do nothing, so—" He took another sip. "Just having a drink." Luke slapped his friend on the back, then downed his second drink and stood up. "Shoot, I'll go a few rounds with ya. I've been there before, man. I gotcha." Donnie turned to him, doubtful. The barkeep looked at them both, confused. A few more patrons left the bar. "For real, mate? Of course. I'm not busy at all. Might as well help my brother out." Donnie looked at Luke, genuine appreciation clear in his eyes. He stood up and grabbed his friend's hand, clutching it tightly. "You're all right, lad. An absolute unit." Luke smiled. "Well, how'd you want it?" Donnie turned, finishing his drink, then spread his arms with a wide grin. "Just have a go, hey?" At least a third of the bar was still watching the humans. The other patrons, long since returned to their drinks and food after the initial meeting, didn't turn to violence. The barkeep was on edge, confused and wary. She wasn't stupid enough to try and confront the two, but she was definitely keeping their tabs open. To any alien watching with a fundamental understanding of human social cues, it seemed to be clear that these two humans were companions. They bared teeth, conversational tones, eye contact, and physical affirmation all pointed to them having a healthy relationship. That's why it was jarring for those watching to see the second human ram his fist directly into the first one's chest, sending him stumbling back into the table of aliens that had been discussing him earlier. Donnie barked out a laugh. "Ha! Let's have some more! Heads up!" The ground floor of patrons immediately scattered from the point of conflict as Donnie threw himself back at Luke, swinging wild haymakers as he went. He was met with a series of blows as well, the two going at it with abandon. The barkeep crouched behind the serving counter, cursing silently. The sound of knuckle-striking meat filled the room as the two humans beat the tar out of one another. To put it eloquently, body shots, head shots, blows that grazed off arms and legs, hundreds of pounds of pressure were absorbed and returned in kind. Donnie reached too far with the punch. Luke dipped around to deal a solid jab to the thigh, right in the sweet spot. He immediately began limping, cursing and laughing. Oh, good shot, lucky boy." The other human stopped. "You're right, you're good." Donnie rubbed his leg and kicked it a few times, then up. "Oh yeah, all good, mercy." Luke grinned and held out his hand, up in the air, palms out as if he was going to grab a bar at head height. Confused and intrigued onlookers watched as the other human assumed the same stance. They locked fingers. Fights were nothing new in this bar, nor to these patrons. In truth, tonight had been a slow night in that sense, and it was most likely due to the humans' presence. Most of the races that frequented the bar were scrappy and confident, as one had to be to do well in these businesses. However, they weren't stupid, and after the humans gained a reputation as fighters, they usually stayed away. Humanity was simply in a different weight class. A single one of the minor blows thrown by the humans could do irreparable damage to several of the races here. The haymakers thrown could go through plaster steel. which meant that it was more than enough to blow out a thorax or rib cage. Yet it wasn't only the sheer power and speed, but the number of attacks that were being delivered. These two humans were generating more damage in this one bout than what a gas farmer could generate in its entire lifetime. There were warrior races in the galaxy, of course, brutal fighters, aggressive and merciless, those that could hold their own and even beat humans in a fair fight, to say nothing of the Peladorians. But, as it were, there were none of them here. So it was with respect and some fear that the patrons of the bar watched, some still sipping drinks now that they knew that it wasn't an all-out brawl. The two humans were locked onto each other. They looked relaxed until one of them spoke. 3, 2, 1, go! Their entire bodies tensed up like kinetic catapults, and the riveted ground beneath them creaked as the two strained against one another. One of the patrons of the bar stumbled outside, sick from his sensitivity to energy. If anything, this duel became more aggressive than the last. The humans slammed up against each other, their arms flexed against one another, every one of their joints bearing enormous pressure. They surged back and forth like waves, each step crushing down like hammers. Donnie pulled them to the side, trying to bear down on Luke's left hand. He responded by driving Donnie backwards. Tables were knocked aside as they were smashed through the seating area. Then they both were low, in wide stances, grunting and shoving each other like bulls. Luke yanked both arms out to the maximum range and swung low, catching his wrists under the bottom. Donnie gritted his teeth as he slammed up into the wall of the bar. The building shook slightly. Luke growled like an animal as he talked upwards with his hands and lifted with his legs, forcing Donnie's wrists to go in the wrong direction. "Say it! Like hell!" Donnie shoved off the wall with his feet, sending both of them backwards towards the bar. They both rolled on the ground for a moment before standing up panting. Luke turned to the barkeep. 2 more specials, please. And some grilled slab, make it brown. She sighed and relayed the orders to the kitchen. The two humans circled each other in low stances, arms at the ready. "I've got to pin you like a barfly, mate. Show, don't tell. Ever been to school, Donnie?" Donnie laughed. "Yeah, they taught me to go for the legs." The two grabbed at each other, hands and backs and necks, trying to bear the other down. They slapped away takedowns and drove against each other like tanks. The more experienced fighters in the bar watched, enraptured. The more savvy recorded. 3 different styles of combat. These men must be the elite of their kind. It was Donnie that gained the upper hand. Luke went to take his leg, but he jumped and pivoted in the air, landing both of them on Luke's back. Donnie scrabbled for a triangle choke while Luke wheezed for air. The only sound was now muffled grunting and muted thuds as the human rolled around in a deathlock. Luke worked his hand under Donnie's leg, base red, and managed to slip out from under it. Pivoting around on his back, he locked both legs around Donnie's midsection and locked his ankles. Donnie looked down. "Don't you do it, Lukey." Luke crushed together with his thighs, pushing the air out of his opponent. Donnie tried to get his hands under the offending limbs, but it was too tight. Luke's legs cranked together like pistons. The bar watched as the now prone humans grunted with exertion, one trying to crush the other, one trying to maintain his oxygen supply. It lasted for a solidly 30 seconds before Donnie quickly tapped Luke's leg. Many of the audience were dumbfounded, unsure of what had just happened. The two lay there for a moment, chests heaving, then staggered upright and went to the bar. The barkeep tapped on the counter. "You two added a bit to your tab just now." Luke looked around at the smashed tables and chairs, imprints on the floor, and the person-sized dent in the wall. He snickered and pointed at it. "It looks just like you, Don." Donnie chuckled, his breathing already returned to normal. "Maybe they'll frame it. Oi, looky, thanks, I needed that." He looked to the barkeep, who was doing some best bluff she could muster after the display. "Sorry about that, miss. Put it on me. I'll quote it as a medical expense." She shook her head. At least it wasn't a window this time. The other patrons of the bar slowly returned from the walls and corners of the bar as the humans ate and chattered. Things were returned to normal when the two stood up again. As if on cue, everyone returned to the safe zone. "Seriously, mate, you're a legend. I had me a good thing there. What your leg thing is still trash." Luke patted him on the back. "Maybe next time. Do you want to get a job in security? I know a few ships that need it, and I can be a reference." Donnie shook his head. "No, mate. I'm going to have to call with Mary, see if I can iron things out. If that doesn't work, I'll shoot you a message. Cool, see you around, Donnie. Cheers. The two parted ways, leaving the bar in peace. The barkeep rubbed her neck, surveying the damage. Maybe she should hire a human as security, or invest in a fighting pit. She looked at the dent in the wall. Why not both? End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.